This has been at the bottom of the sea for 70 years, and look, it's still alive. Hello, my name's Louise Allum, and I'm an image quality specialist based here at the BFI National Archive in Berkhamsted. I've worked at the archive for almost 20 years, and during my time here, I've come across some, shall we say, weird and wonderful things that were found in the archive collection, and today I'd like to share one with you. What I have before me is a unique copy of a film called The Carpet from Baghdad. It's a Selig polyscope film, an American film from 1915, and is the story of a gang of crooks, one of whom steals a prayer rug from a mosque in Baghdad, uses it to fund proceeds of crimes because they're trying to rob a bank next door to an antique shop, and the guardians of the carpet are not particularly happy about it and try to reclaim the carpet from the crooks. And it was what we think is being carried across the Atlantic by someone perhaps from a distribution company or a studio to sell the film to a British audience. En route to the UK from New York, the Lusitania was sunk off of the southern coast of Ireland by a German U-boat on May the 7th, 1915, resulting in the loss of almost 1,200 lives. In 1982, there was a salvage dive commissioned that went to the bottom of the Celtic Sea and found the wreckage. And in the wreckage, they came across a single can of film that was stuck solid, and it was brought back to the surface and then brought here to the National Archive to be looked at, identified and worked on. Having been kept at the bottom of the sea for 70 years in cold, dark, wet environment, it had an adverse effect on the film. However, appearances are deceiving because you can actually tell a lot about this film. During the unwinding process, obviously the film had gone through some shrinkage. Once we unwound it, we couldn't wind it back into one singular reel again, which is why there's now 4 cans. It's one reel of film split over 4 cans. So it's very loosely wound. Film is not normally wound this loose, but because of the condition of the film, we have to try and give it as much breathing room as possible, which is why we split it over 4 cans. You might be able to see that some of the perfs are damaged, but they are still there. But unfortunately, there's so much perf damage and so much shrinkage to this film, this is not possible to be projected. But even though it's quite damaged, sections are missing, it's very shrunk, it's very twisted, it's very brittle, we are still able to get some viable image off of it. And one of the shots that we have is a set of intertitles, and at the top of the intertitles is the title of the film, and the title of the film is The Carpet from Baghdad, and you can clearly see that on the damaged intertitles. To give you a comparison what a film should look like, for want of a better word, this is just a normal 35mm polyester countdown leader. It's not twisted, it's nice and straight. You can see the frame lines and the perforations. You can see the 3 from the countdown. This is what a piece of film should look like. This is the section of intertitle that we could use to identify. You can hear how delicate and brittle and thin the film is. When a film is produced, we have a base material, and in this case the base is cellulose nitrate, which was used right at the early start of the cinema. It was stopped being produced around the mid-1950s, around 1952, 1953. So this is cellulose nitrate, which is an incredibly flammable base, so hence I'm being very careful when I'm handling it. On top of the base you have what's called an emulsion layer, and that's where the image is actually printed onto the base. And what's happened here is water damage, or we're not quite sure, but I'm assuming water damage has managed to lift the emulsion layer away from the base layer. It's not a hole, I can't put my finger through the hole, the base is still there, it's just the emulsion layer is missing. By all rights, it shouldn't have survived, because, you know, common sense would say if you put something in something very cold, very dark and very wet, it shouldn't survive. If you'd put, say, a magnetic videotape and had sunk it and it had been underwater for 70 years, all that would be left is dust. Well, very wet dust, but that's all that would be left. Weirdly, optimum storage condition for film in general is somewhere that's quite cold, quite dark, with a little bit of moisture, around a 35% relative humidity, and that's what we keep our storage conditions at for film. So in a weird way, at the bottom of this Celtic Sea, you had 2 of the optimum conditions. It was quite dark and it was very cold, which helps It was just obviously very wet, which didn't help. But, you know, by all rights it shouldn't have survived, but it did, and that's kind of why I like it. It's a survivor. Film has been around for over 120 years. The earliest film we have in the collection is from 1896. It's in good condition, it's kept in optimum storage conditions. I've seen some beautiful hand colour stencil nitrate from the same era that's beautiful. It looks like it's doesn't look like it's brand new. It looks like it's new. So film, if you look after it, it will tend to look after itself. Digital hasn't been around long enough for us to know how well it's going to store long term. It's only really been around sort of the last 25, 30 years, so we're still in that learning process. But this film here is, what, 109 years old. Has been at the bottom of the sea for 70 years. But it's still here, you can still see it, you can still touch it, you can still read it. And it kind of is an ode to longevity of film, I think. So when we store film now, not at the bottom of the sea, we tend to store it around these 3-inch cores, and this allows a fairly tight wind of a reel, but without putting too much undue pressure on the film. When this film was created and when it was shipped, we believe it would have been transported around one of these, which is a 2-inch core. Because it's a smaller core, it results in a tighter wind. And with the tighter wind and the pressure of being at the bottom of the sea and the cold and the damp and the film just reacting with the environment that it's in, it gave it some, we call it irregular shrinkage. So this piece of film, we think, is what was wrapped around a core, not this particular core, but around a core like this. And with the whole motion of the boat sinking and general tilting and the movement of the ocean, it's worked its way off of the core, and it's just decided to shrink and shrink and shrink because there was nothing for it to work against. And the reason it's not circular is because film shrinks in 2 directions. It can shrink that way and it can shrink that way. And this film, this particular bit, has shrunk both ways. Solid. I want to say from a film point of view, it's not ideal because obviously you can't project it, but from a technician point of view, and not something you see every day, this to me is really cool. So this is a 35mm print, so it's not a master copy of a film. Basically, when a film is produced, you have a master copy, and from those masters, you create prints. As far as we know, there are no copies available for the public to watch currently, but that's not to say they don't exist somewhere. Certain film titles are presumed lost, doesn't mean they stay lost. A print has recently been found of Betty Balfour's Love, Life and Laughter from 1923. So over 100 years old, and the print was found in a cupboard. So they do exist, it's finding them. And so hopefully, you never know, there may be a copy of this film somewhere. Film and film conservation is constantly evolving as newer technologies are developed and the advent of digitalisation, for example. As it stands, we can't project this particular reel of film. And we also can't, with the technology we have here, we can't scan it to make it digitally available. But that's not to say that technology won't develop and make us be able to do that in the future. It's just currently we don't have the capability for that. So why are we keeping this film as, you know, in the condition that it's in? Why is it something that we bothered to keep in the collection? And the simple answer is it's an incredibly unique artefact that shows the longevity and the survival instinct of film. And from a purely personal point of view, the first time I saw it, I couldn't believe what I'd seen. I didn't believe the person who told me, that said it was from, 70 years old and came from the bottom of the sea, because it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't have survived. All the odds were against it. And yet it's here and it's tangible and I can hold it and I can look at it and I can see it and I can see the image and I can read the intertitles, and it's just something so incredibly unique of a film that perhaps of its time was a mass-produced film that didn't necessarily hold any cultural significance. It was just a film that was produced for entertainment, but has now become this unique thing that the BFI holds, and it just has a charm, and every time I look at it, it just makes me smile. And you shouldn't really smile when a film looks this bad, but it does make you smile. And no, we can't project it, and no, we can't currently scan it, but we can learn from it. And you know, it still teaches us about storage conditions and what film can endure. And with the optimum storage conditions that it's now kept in, this should last another 75 years without any problems, aside from the ones it's already got.